Bliss or a bubble? As I took a sad walk down memory lane, I found myself wondering about the sudden, icy chill that my fairy tale romance seemed to turn into after only 2 weeks. I, Janet, am the main character in this strange story. It's about a short but bitterly sharp marriage that made me question the very idea of a holy marriage. On a happy morning, I said I do to Maurice, a man who seemed to me to be a perfect blend of modern ideas and old traditions. All of his skills as a successful businessman, his charisma, and the fact that he was a true gentleman had been so captivating. His family, which included his sister Anna and his mother Margaret, looked like a perfect example of strong, modern women. But I didn't know it at the time, but these characters were going to change my life in ways I didn't expect. Anna was a woman who was known for wanting to go far in her career. She was a well-respected journalist who was known for her powerful speeches about women's freedom and rights. Their mother Margaret was a shining example of a strong will. As a retired school principal, her life was a great example of how hard work and determination can pay off. The lives of Anna and Margaret gave me a map of where I was going in the future. I had always loved and looked for women like them, who were smart and strong. The idea of starting a new part of my life with such strong, forward-thinking women thrilled me to the core. But the real world soon put out that spark of happiness, showing me that things were not nearly as good as I had thought. I got stuck at a place where two very different paths met. On one, I saw how active and alive Anna and Margaret were. They showed me how to become the kind of strong, independent woman I wanted to be. On the other side was a harsh truth that was much worse than I had thought. As soon as I saw how hard things were going to be, my excitement quickly faded. I was raised with liberal values, so I always believed that everyone should have the same rights and chances. But the conservative ideas I was exposed to were in stark contrast to what I thought was right. Even though Anna and Margaret had paved the way with their unwavering courage and determination, social norms were deeply rooted. I learned that asserting my identity in a place like that was not the smooth ride I had imagined. I ended up going down a rough, thorny road instead. The women I looked up to had been through storms that I was just beginning to face. As I tried to figure out how to live my new life, I couldn't help but think, would I follow in the steps of the people I looked up to, or would I make my own path, which would be filled with challenges and victories? No matter which way I went, Anna and Margaret would be my guides. Their bravery would be my unfailing compass. But after only a few weeks of my happily ever after, I started to feel like an outsider in my own home. My first impression of feminism and modernism in them was that they were very strong for women. Anna and Margaret, two women I looked up to, were slowly giving up their modern beliefs and becoming more powerful. Their dismissal of Maurice's friendly behavior toward me made me feel like I didn't have a voice. I had to listen to their extreme ideas about marriage and how women should be in charge, while they completely ignored the important roles men play in a marriage. So I could protect both Maurice and myself, I found the courage to stand up to the two of them and paint them a picture of how I saw equality and companionship in marriage. My modern but grounded point of view seemed to scare them, which made our home a place of chaos. Anna and Margaret putting pressure on Maurice to end our marriage was the final blow. Margaret's actions toward Maurice, her own son and me, her daughter-in-law, showed that she had no empathy or humanity at all. The happiness and shared joys that come with being married were replaced by constant fighting because Anna and Margaret had different ideas about how life should be. I decided to do something drastic because I didn't want to add to the chaos and I didn't want Maurice to hurt. A choice that would change the way my life would go from then on. There was never a time when the steadily getting worse storm and seeing Maurice struggling under its weight didn't get to me. I knew I had to take a strong, planned step. I was thinking about a lot of things at once, so I carefully thought about what my next step would mean. But Maurice kept coming back into my mind. His usually happy face was now filled with many different shades of pain and despair. Even though these images were sad, they made me more determined. The only thing I could do was quickly put into action my plan to save Maurice from his terrible situation, while also getting away from the storm that was getting worse. Even though there were risks, the thought of the peace we both wanted was a bright spot. The next morning, when it was still dark, I called a family meeting. With a steady hand, I gave Maurice the divorce papers in the middle of our heated arguments. I told her why I was taking such a big step. Our once joyous journey was now going in a direction I didn't want it to, which led me to this point. My only goal was to free Maurice from the weight of his sister and mother's strong beliefs. Maurice held onto the papers like they were life preservers thrown to him in a stormy sea of surprise. As the broken pieces of our dreams went around his stunned mind, the room seemed to get smaller. The blurry faces of our relatives turned into a swirl of uncertainty. Even then, I stared at him, silently begging him to see my choice as a way to set him free, not as a block. The family kept fighting, and their harsh opinions and biases could be heard all over the house we used to live in. I kept going, taking comfort in the fact that I was strong. Maurice's quietness showed that he was trying to hold back an emotional storm. I knew our path would be hard, but it was necessary for him to break free and maybe find his voice against his family's overbearing ideas. The fire in my eyes showed how strong I was inside and how determined I was to free him from oppressive traditions. The fighting may have left its mark on our home, but our brave choices paved the way for a dangerous path that could lead to a world without repression. As Maurice tried to figure out how bad the situation was, I told him that I was becoming more and more aware of how his loyalty was shifting away from us and toward his family. I said that our once passionate relationship was slowly dying in the murky muck of too much family loyalty and expectations I could no longer meet. I tried to dispel any ideas that I was angry with his family. Instead, I told him I was worried about how much they were limiting my freedom. I came to the conclusion that he needed to take this step in order to strengthen his family ties without putting more stress on our marriage. My goal wasn't to cut him off from his family, but to free myself from their burdensome demands and give him some freedom in the process. As my conversation with Maurice went on, I realized I needed to be clearer about how I felt. I decided to talk to him about how I was worried that his family's growing influence was not only making us less friendly, but also cutting into the space our relationship used to take up. I tried to reassure him that my stance wasn't because I didn't like his family, but because I was looking for a balance that wasn't based on family ties. As we talked more, I told him how important it was to keep a balance between his real family and the family we were trying to make together. I kept going and told them that I wasn't fighting against his family, but against the unfair responsibilities they were making us take on. I told him that he should set some limits so that his family doesn't make too many demands on our relationship. My goal wasn't to cut him off from his family. Instead, I wanted to get away from the unintended consequences of their high expectations. I did this because I wanted to get back a feeling of freedom that I hadn't had in a while. It wasn't just about giving me freedom. It was also about letting Maurice embrace both his past and his future without giving up either. I said again that my plans were based on the idea that our relationship needed both shared space and independence to grow. I hoped he would see things from my point of view, that it wasn't a protest but a plea for us to find our way in this complicated situation. As we went through these rough waters, I stressed how important it was to talk to each other and treat each other with respect. Maurice had to realize that letting us be ourselves and caring about our own wants and needs didn't make our connection weaker. Instead, it strengthened the trust and support on which our love was built. It was important for us to find the right balance between setting limits and being aware of each other's ties to family and traditions. We can only really grow together if we give each other room to grow. I really hoped that as we worked our way through these problems, we would be able to make our relationship stronger and more harmonious, so that both our roots and our wings could live together and grow. It was important for us to find a way to honor both our own journeys and the paths we all took that helped shape us into the people we are now. When I finally left that place, I could see their shocked faces following me. Maurice looked at me with tears running down his face. He couldn't stop his family from hurting me or stop me from leaving. My last words to them, "Love shouldn't be suffocating, and marriage shouldn't be a war zone," echoed in their shocked silence. As I walked away, the weight of my decision started to hit me, but with each step, I felt clearer and more free. The sun seemed to shine a little brighter, the wind whispered soothing words into my ears, and the world opened up in ways I had never dared to imagine. I knew in my heart that I was making my own decisions about my life. The challenge of making my own way was ahead of me, but I was ready for it. I was determined to stand up for what I believed to be true, and to find a love that let both of us breathe freely, without fear or restraint. The memory of Maurice's teary eyes would haunt me, but this painful moment would always remind me of how brave it was to choose freedom over society's rules.